Great to see you here again. In this video I will be talking about the baselines and project execution. We look at project planning in the baselines, we see what happens during execution with the baselines, and of course what's very important is also to consider what happens with the baselines during execution and when we have changes. Why are baselines important? Baselines are in fact the essence of the project planning, and they represent what we will do during project execution, and of course they lead to the project goal. The baseline describes what has to be done, by when, and how much it will cost. So basically there are different types of baselines that we will identify later, but we see by when it's about a schedule. What has to be done or must be done is the scope. How much it will cost is in fact basically the cost baseline, but there are some other baselines that we will look into later. All work completed during the project execution will be controlled against the baselines. We have the standard, the measuring basics, and we are comparing all the work that we are doing compared to those initial baselines. And once we do this, we can see what is the status of the project. We find information about cost, about schedule, about the people working on the project, about the scope that has been completed. So basically, comparing the actual situation with the baselines is an important part of the monitor and control process steps. Here we're going to monitor, we're going to see what's happening, and we're going to control if everything is done the way we want it. First thing we do is project planning. After we start with or we finished with the charter is approved, and we're going to do the planning. And at the end of the planning, we will find the different baselines. Now, during the planning, we go through different steps, look at the project management process, and later in one of the next lessons, we will talk about the 10-step approach. During that planning, we go through different processes, and each step or process provides us with more and more detailed information of the project. We will learn about the scope, we will learn about the cost of the activities, we will learn about the scheduling of the activities, their duration, the cost, and so on. At the end of the planning, all those documents that we created, they will be used during the project execution, or at least we will use them when we start with the project, because that's what we plan, what we think will happen during execution. Now these things can change. Now these initial baselines, they are created during the planning. All the documents we defined or created during the planning, they are very important for project execution, and they will be used in the project execution process step. Let's have a look at the main baselines that we have. Typically, when we have the baselines, we are looking at typically the following baselines. The scope baseline is basically defining the scope that has to be included in the project. It's all the work that has to be done, and it's one of the first baselines that we create during the planning process. A second baseline is the schedule baseline. Here we have the planned start and finish dates of the activities, and we see this in a Gantt. We have a Gantt chart with start and finish times of activities, and basically it's like a calendar overview where we can see when what has to be done and how long it will take. Now the schedule baseline is not obtained immediately. We have to go through different steps. We did an initial planning based on the precedence diagram. We find the early start of the activities, the late start of the activities, but then we have to add the resources to this baseline. And when we add the resources, we have to resolve resource issues, and those resource issues will lead to rescheduling the different activities. And once we found the solution so that no resource is being used more than 100% at any time during the project, we say this is the schedule baseline. We have the planned start and planned finish dates of the activities. Of course, once we have the schedule baseline, we can determine the cost baseline. We can see how much money we expect to spend during each of these steps, and basically it will lead to the time-phased budget and to the S-curve. The S-curve is the overview of the spending over the project. I spoke about resources. Well, resources are important. We talk about human resources, but also material resources like computers, offices, printers, airplanes, tractors, all these things that we have to do in order to be able to do the work. Here we're looking at the schedule baseline. We have the overview when and where we need those different resources. And it's very important to see or to compare with the actual situation. Typically, once a project starts, you have to get those resources assigned to your project, and that's not always the case. They may be promised to other projects, more important projects, or to a more powerful project manager, and then you see that those resources are not necessarily available. But it's very important for you to understand what's happening here, because it will provide information to the management about the resources that you estimated to use, that you used to make your estimate, and when you don't have those resources, it will have an impact on your project performance. Execution in the baselines. Well, at the end of the planning, we created the initial baselines, so we have all the elements. We have the planning, we have the start, we can allocate the activities, we can start the activities, we can allocate reserve to resources. Now, basically what happens is that during execution, things may change. You may have delays or you may have changes. And whenever we have things that are different that compared to the initial baselines, we have to take into account what has been changed. So we always have to update the baselines to the actual situation. Like I said, we may have changes that have been requested, and of course, once a change is approved, it will be integrated in the project. Once integrated in the project, we have to replan, we have to create new baselines, because the old baselines have not been let's say they are not valid anymore, they have been updated. Now, it's sometimes important to verify what baselines people are reporting to, because it's when you changed items, the old baselines are not valid anymore and you cannot use them. So from the moment that an approval of a change has been done or has been made, you have to update the baselines and work on the project from here on. Like I said, those changes are very important during execution. We cannot allow unauthorized changes, and basically the baselines will help you to identify unauthorized changes, for example, creep or gold plating, because they may have consequences to the project. You will see, hey, my activities are taking longer, they're more expensive. What is happening here? And you can verify that with the active baseline. Now, like I said, whenever a change is requested and approved, we have to adjust the project plan. And when we adjust the project plan, we will have new baselines. The new baselines will be the basis for monitoring, controlling, and reporting, and everything should be done in reference to the new baselines. Version management is very important, and when we plan, when we start with activities, when we manage the project, we have to follow the latest update of the baselines. It is important, of course, that all changes have to go through the change control process and must be approved by the change control board before being accepted. It's only from that moment that the project manager can start adding these changes to the project plan. These changes then will lead to new planning data, new start dates, new finish dates, cost estimates, resources allocations, and so on. So that's basically what I wanted to say about the project baselines. The baselines are very important, but you have to know that they are flexible, that we have to adjust them whenever a change has been approved. But it also is a very good way to see and detect not crashing, that I will talk about later, but we will see that we have creep, and we can compare it with the baselines. If we see that activities are taking longer or more expensive, we may have to deal with some unauthorized changes. Baselines are only approved or changed after formal approval of the changes, and once they have been approved, we have to report everything relative to the new baselines. So that was it for this video. I'm looking forward to seeing you in our next video. Thank you and bye bye.